everything that has the breath of life. I have given every green plant for food. And it was so. God saw everything that God had made, and indeed it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning the sixth day. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all their multitude. On the sixth day, God finished the work that had been done. On the seventh day, God rested. So God blessed the seventh day and hallowed it, because on it God rested from all the work that God had done in creation. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created.
So I'm going to share a little bit about camp, and then I asked Randy and Linda to talk about something, and Leda. So we're just going to see how this all works out. But the piece that I wanted to share about my own experience at camp, because it was such a formative piece for me. And it happened at a time where I had come back to Pullman after living elsewhere, came back as the minister of this church, and right away started working at camp, because that kind of happens. Like, come on and do a thing. Randy and Linda are very good at this. And so my kind of specialty was directing the high school camp. Oh yeah, it was a production. It was a deal directing senior high camp. But I really grew to love it. We had retreats up there that I directed. I'd done a number of things at a certain point in time at camp. And I hit a point where there were a lot of things that happened. There were things happening in this congregation that were difficult, transitions happening. My sister had passed away suddenly. So that was a difficult thing that had happened. I had started, after many years of not having health issues, having some significant health issues that had to be dealt with. At the time that this happened, though, it wasn't clear what was going on. I was just all of a sudden having health problems that I had not had. I have epilepsy, and I'd started having seizures again, which I hadn't, and nothing was working to get rid of the seizures. And so I was about to sign on to do another camp, and Randy is a very wise person in my life, always has been. And so Randy was talking to me, and he said, why don't you just come, like, have you ever been here and not been in charge of something? And I thought about it, and I said, no. I actually never had been to camp and not been in charge of something while I was at camp and planning something and programming and all that. He said, why don't you just come up here? You kind of sound like you need a break. You need a Sabbath. And why don't you just come up here and just be? And so I did that, and there was I don't know if it's still there, but there was an apartment that was there for ministers specifically to do retreats. And I showed up, and I actually had to go get the golf cart, which Randy was cracking up about, because I had like all these books, and I was going to work on Greek, because I felt like, oh, my Greek is really bad now. I haven't done anything, and I've got this Hebrew thing I want to learn. So I had all these books that I was going to study while I was there. And Randy was just doing what he's doing right now. He was just laughing at me. He was just laughing. He said, okay, Kristine, I'll help you roll all this stuff in. I had projects and all these things. So I moved them all into this little apartment. And I quickly realized I'm going to do absolutely none of that stuff. And then there was a camp that was there, and they were missing a chaplain. And they saw that I was there, and they're like, oh, Kristine, you could be the chaplain for us. We need a chaplain, because our chaplain was not able to come. And Randy is like, and I almost said yes, and I look over, and Randy is like, and I said, I'm not going to do that. And he's going. It was a wonderful moment. And so what I ended up doing was absolutely nothing. I ended up walking and resting. I ended up praying a lot and thinking, trying to wrap my mind around a whole bunch of things that had happened that I had not processed at all. And I really felt like that was an instrumental moment, because I think before that moment, I was not raised to be a rester. I grew up on a farm. There was always work to be done. My mother was a social justice advocate person. They were doers all the time. And nobody had ever taught me really how to rest. And it was that time and some firmness coming from a good friend that really helped me start to figure out, oh yeah, actually, if you're going to be a human being and not just a human doing, part of that involves rest. So I smiled when I looked at the passage choices, the lectionary choices for today, because one of the lectionary choices, we did Pentecost last week. You might remember if you were here. So that choice of the lectionary takes you right into evangelizing. And the disciples go out and they start converting the people. And aside from which, that's a hard thing for me to think about getting really excited, going out and just randomly converting and making people Christian. That I struggle with some of that conversion stuff anyway. But it was just the doing. It's like Pentecost happened, and now what are you going to do? And the other choice was this passage, which has nothing to do with doing, it just has to do with resting. So everything happens, creation happens, there's the fruition of something, and then you rest and you take stock. So my reason for wanting you to go to camp is to learn to rest. My experience in my work now, where I spend a lot of time helping people figure out how to calm their nervous system down and de-stress, is that a lot of us are not good at resting. We have things we do. We have things on our phones, we have lots of distractions, but we're not great at resting. And camp is a place where you are invited to take the time to figure out who you are by taking a Sabbath rest and finding an experience, kind of finding your way back on that sacred journey. And I will always be grateful to Insidsen for that experience of going on that journey to rest. So that's my story. I actually asked Randy and Linda, who you have to know, were not really resting, because I know them, but they were retired. Not too long ago, they were retired. And now they're working at Insidsen again, which I kind of thought, and I can tell you, when you're doing what they're doing, it's not really resting. They're not having necessarily that retreat experience. But I wanted to know why they decided to do this and come back to Insidsen. So come on up. This is very tightly planned, you can see.
We were asked to do this about 15 minutes, half an hour ago.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. I want you to look at our vintage. You can tell by the silver hair and the wrinkles that we've got a few decades on us. We've been great-grandparents for a long time. And we have been going to camp in Insidsen. Randy, since he was 4 years old.
1951.
And I didn't show up until I was in 7th grade. And then there were a lot of years when we didn't go to camp. And we started going back to camp in, mid-80s. Okay, we were living in the Seattle area, both of us working at kind of high-pressure jobs, and we went to family camp. And I can remember driving down Highway 97 to get to camp, both of us really, really tired, and saying to each other, what have we done? We have just signed up to spend a week of precious vacation time with people that we don't even know. And that, by that night, the first night of camp, we began to make friends. But I think of resting that week. We stayed in one of those little old cabins down on the beach, I think cabin A, built in the late 30s. We pulled a tarp out on the beach every night, pulled our sleeping bags out there, and slept on with the sound of the water coming at us. And we couldn't even go on the float trip. We couldn't even move. We just rested that first week of camp.
At the end of that first week, we'd spent the week, we brought a little sailboat with us, and we were teaching kids how to sail, and we were sailing, and we were just having a great time, and really relaxed. I mean, and we needed it. Anyway, Eric Johnson, who, Bobby and Carl's brother, was the director then, and Eric had been a 4-year-old on the beach at Ensidson in 1951 with me, and we were tag-alongs at women's camp. At any rate, Eric asked Linda and I to stop and visit before we headed home, and he asked if we'd be willing to start a junior high camp at Ensidson. There hadn't been a junior high camp there for many years. And he knew that we had done youth group at our church in Kirkland for probably since 72 or 73. Anyway, the bottom line is we got back together with him a few weeks later and said, yeah, if we could have either the week before family camp or the week after, so we could come from Kirkland and be at Ensidson for 2 weeks, 1 week with the kids. Anyway, we did that, and then, oh gosh, it grew. We got 80 kids, and then we birthed off a senior high camp because the junior high kids that were graduating were saying, what about us? And so a few years of senior high camp being in Spirit Lodge and junior high camp being in the cabins, and pretty soon we had 2 weeks, and it just grew and grew and grew. And it was coming out of that Linda and I ended up at a National Outdoor Ministries gathering in Cape Cod, and at the invitation of Eric Johnson, and both of us came to the realization that what we were doing in our church youth group and at Ensidson was much more important than what we were doing in our secular lives. And so we decided to go into ministry, and we were both going to go to seminary, but Ensidson kind of got hooked me, and I ended up being the director after Eric left for 22 years. And the question was, why are we doing what we're doing now? 22 years of the best times of my life. Being able to be the host, welcoming people, building the new buildings and all kinds of stuff. And when we found out, well, actually, we stayed involved after retirement in the programming for junior and senior high camp and kids in intermediate. And the last 2 years, we had a director there that shouldn't have been hired. And we were there and experienced her and realized it just was brutal it was brutal for the camp, it was brutal for the guests. There's people that had been longtime users of the camp that left, and because of what was happening. And anyway, she was terminated. We started volunteering out there and to try and repair things, just physical things. And then it came to the point where they were really worried about how to manage the camp a little over a year ago. And Linda and I kind of looked at each other and said, I think I feel a call. And so, I think it was May 23rd of 2025, we moved back out to Ensidson as full-time directors and getting the place back. So.
Yeah. Okay, and that has been our life for the last year. We are full-time volunteers, and because of this morning's scripture passage, I'd like to touch on Sabbath rest when the to-do list has no end. I think when your church retreat was in September, when you were there, you realized who was doing the cooking. Since last August, Randy and I were the cooking team, and we were also the maintenance team. My brother Buzz returned also as a full-time volunteer, and he has been fixing things. The work at Ensitson for the last year has been consuming. The to-do list is endless. There's been a lot of deferred maintenance to take care of, a lot of damage. And the days have been long. And when you're in your late 70s and are working a 12-hour day, or sometimes a 14-hour day, it takes some doing. But that's where the rest comes with the place. And it is the beauty of Ensitson. And I think of working a long day and then sitting and watching the light on the lake and simply saying, "Thank you, God." I think of the way that Lake Coeur d'Alene looked last night. The pastel colors on the lake as the sun was setting. It's glorious. It is just glorious. And the rest comes for us as it comes for me visually and hearing the sounds of the birds. The rest comes from the place itself. During fellowship time, as we talk a little bit more about camp, we're going to give you details about what needs to be done and invite you to come and help. Come and help. And Bobby has already volunteered this morning, so yeah. But being conscious of the need to balance work and rest, that is there. And I think when you come this time, you're going to be surprised. Last Monday, we finished painting the interior of Spirit Lodge, and my brother hung the new lights. I think you're going to like the way it looks. But that's one heck of a big painting project that's taken all winter. So anyway, I think of, Randy, do you have anything more about rest and place to add?
No. Linda's comment about sitting on the deck and watching the light change and the birds move up and down the lake and quite often in the morning seeing a pair of eagles flying overhead and osprey and moose and the other day an elk that stood on a 50 feet away from us and turned around and looked at us as if, I guess I'll share this with you, and lots of deer. So anyway, it's a glorious experience. So thank you.
Yes. Well, I have been given 5 minutes, so I was like, how will I possibly fill 5 minutes? But obviously I have about 30 minutes of things to say. So we're doing 5 minutes. So as my mom mentioned, she's been going to camp for a long time, which means I've been going to camp for a long time. I think the first time I went to camp, I was in utero. Does that sound right? Yes, yeah. And then I tagged along when my mom was directing and counseling, and was Randy and Linda are like my second grandparents. I feel like they are pre-consciousness people in my life. I've just always known them and always known camp. I went to camp every single summer. I was eligible as a camper from entering second grade to entering my freshman year of college. And then I came back, I was a junior counselor, and then I was a regular counselor, and then I directed junior high camp, and I was on staff for a summer and a half. And then last summer I went back for a week in my transition point, like less than a month before I left for div school, me and my partner went up for a week to help with maintenance, and I did a lot of laundry, and Drew, I think, like fixed a boat or just doing stuff with Buzz, stuff that is not, I don't know what was going on, but it was great. I also spent some really important time at Insitsin resting. The summer I came home for the first time from Beirut, so after I'd been in Beirut for about a year and a half, I'd lived through COVID there and the explosion, and I was home for about a month, and I called up Mark and I was like, is that cabin available? And he was like, yep, come on home. And so I went up for a week there. Camp has just been the place. Camp is my second home. I can't imagine, I would not be going to seminary if it weren't for camp, certainly. And I think what I want to talk about, I was thinking about when my mom was talking about Pentecost. Part of the interesting thing about being in a Christian community is that we believe that there is this promise of this future kingdom of God that is both not yet here and already here. And I think that for me, camp is a place where we both practice the kingdom that is already among us. We are a beloved community in a way that we often don't get to be in the rest of our lives. And we also get to imagine together the future and the possible futures that are in front of us if we keep practicing that. I think about growing up, and I think about how hard it is to be a kid, and be especially a kid with commitments to values like social justice and compassion and love. And at camp, you get a whole bunch of adults who are there to help you practice doing that. I think I really learned a lot about loving. I remember, one story I remember very distinctly is I was sitting at I don't know if you guys were there. This was maybe when I was in senior high camp, but we were listening to a presentation, and a girl next to me who I didn't really know, she's kind of like a little smelly and grew up in in Spokane in the inner city. I didn't know her at all, but she started crying, and I was like, guess I'm going to be the person that's going to comfort her. So me and my friend went over and sat with her. Eventually we went off into another room, and we were like, we don't know what to do. And a couple of adults came and sat with us and sat with her, and she told us a lot of stuff about what was going on in her life that was really intense, and we were able to just like be there for her. And then afterwards, one adult or two adults took her off to one room to keep following up, and then two sat with us and talked about what that experience had been like for us. And there were moments when like me and my friends were not very kind, when adults came up and they were like, you guys know that everyone is laughing. I was kind of a bad kid at camp sometimes. I was a little bit of a troublemaker. But we got, just a little, we really got sat down by some grown-ups that loved us, and they were like, you guys know that you're leaders, and you know that this is important, and you have to do something different. You have to be doing something different. You know you're not acting in accordance with your values. And that was also really important for me. I think also, Happy Pride Month. It's June 1st. I think that a lot of the first examples of loving queer relationships and queer futures were both here at church and at camp. I saw queer teens, I saw queer college students, I saw queer elders, I saw all sorts of living configurations and what that could look like. And even though it took me a while to realize my own queerness, I think that was so essential in laying that foundation. I said the last time I preached that if you've got a queer kid, they have to go to camp. It's the most loving, supportive place. And I think also the last thing I'll say, maybe unless I think of more things, is I've been talking a lot with other young members in discernment and young clergy, and a really consistent theme is how many of us went to camp growing up. Camp is where the young leaders of the church are being trained. It's where we get to practice ministering to each other, and it's where we get to see a lot of ministers in action. Certainly most of the pastors I knew growing up, besides my mom, were people at camp. I got to see what it looks like to be a minister. I got to try it out a little bit. The first time I preached was at camp. Camp taught me about rest. It taught me about taking care of myself. And I think it's really no accident that so many of us now who are going into the ministry are camp folks. It's really essential. It is, I think, the denomination as a whole hopefully is starting to realize that it is the place that needs to be supported in order to support the future of our denomination and the future of progressive Christianity in general. And yeah, I love camp. I don't know that there's anything that I can say other than that. It is such a precious place, both in Sitson and the wider world of UCC Outdoor Ministries. If you get a chance to go to other camps, there's a lot of amazing ones. There's one on the west side that's pretty cool too. But in Sitson is certainly my home, and it will be my home. And I am really actually quite proud to get to contribute to this era of In Sitson. I think it was really heartbreaking to see from afar what was happening for the couple of years before you guys stepped back in. And feeling like I didn't know what I could do to help, and being able to like come last summer and
Generations of us learning to help.